So, Beau Barfield, one word to describe your dinner here with us.
Food was good.
And now for Dinner with Racers, presented by
Continental Tire.
with your hosts, Ryan Eversley and Sean Heckman.
Placeholder radio sound. I'm a driver. I'm very angry. This is the sound of a driver on the radio during a race.
What do you think I should order?
All right, welcome once again to Dinner with Racers. I'm Sean Heckman.
I'm Continental Tire.
Or Ryan Eversley.
I'm Ryan Eversley.
If you don't know who we are, fine, let's move on. We are coming here somewhere between Florida and Atlanta.
Exit 390.
Headed home on October 31st, 2015. This is wrapping up a cross-country trip we've had in your lovely Acura.
MDX.
And this has some what tires?
I believe they are Continental Tires.
Anyway, so we met up with a ton of people in racing that we thought would be interesting to talk to. We invited them to dinner, and kind of this is the result. We didn't have an agenda. We didn't have a structure. Some of them we didn't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Continental Tires.
And how many miles on them Contis?
8,000.
All right, 8,000 miles. 30 days we've traveled across.
20 states.
And 27 meals was the result. All for you to listen to and tell us what idiots we are.
Continental Tires.
So, next edition is the great Beaux Barfield. We traveled out to Houston, Texas. This is actually our first home interview that we did. We ate at the famous Beau's Bar and Grill, which is in fact his backyard. So, here's the thing about Beaux Barfield. If you don't know his career, Beaux is currently the race director at the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. One of those jobs that no one wants. Beaux has been a race director for a variety of series over the years. Currently with IMSA, but was sort of the big dog at IndyCar for a couple of years. Kind of cut his teeth in Atlantics.
Yeah, he did Atlantics. He did Continental Tire series while he's been at IMSA. And we got to show up at the place, and there's like 5 people hanging out.
Yeah.
He had like an entourage. They're playing guitars and live music, and we didn't really know what we were getting into. We ended up having dinner delivered from Hungry's, which Beau apparently worked at when he was in high school. I had the Chipotle chicken wrap.
And I had a chicken sandwich.
Of course you did.
So let's listen to Beau. Thanks once again to Continental Tire.
Continental Tire.
For getting us there.
All right, we're going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2.
So,
we've got
your place is awesome.
Yeah,
like, is this like Beau's Ranch? Is there a name for it?
Beau's Bar and Grill.
Beau's Bar and Grill. That's awesome, dude. I love the golf sign. I got a golf sign at home myself. And then, yeah, I didn't realize you had the pool and everything too. That's pretty killer.
Yeah, when I have a history of breaking into places before I buy them.
Okay.
And this was the third place that I broke into without a realtor before I bought it. And so I came around back, and it was in foreclosure for about a year and a half. And when I walked around to the back, the pool was covered because it was just in a state of disarray.
Right.
And the sunroom is where I got in. But I walked into the sunroom, and I saw the pool, and I thought I knew this was going to be my place.
Now, it was for sale on the market?
It was.
Okay.
I was driving around to.
You're not just breaking in like, oh, okay, can I have
Yeah,
this place?
it was.
I got a gun.
What's your
and
price?
A check.
What's your price?
Yeah, no, none of that. None of that. No, it actually. I was touring this side of town, like I told you earlier. This is my old stomping ground. So this place, the first day it came on the market, I saw it online and I made it mine.
So we walk in, and I'm like, no shit. He's got like 4 friends. They're playing guitar. Is this Sunday night here?
Oh yeah,
Nice.
this is normal.
I mean, ever since I've known you, though, that's how it's been. Like, your house has always been like, hey, come over, we'll play some cards or some sim on the computer or something. And yeah, do you have a sim here?
Negative.
Okay, so I was telling Sean, and I couldn't remember whose chassis it was, but for the backstory, we used to go over to Beau's house. Eric Foss was a roommate of his at the time, and you had a sim set up downstairs with an actual F2000 chassis that had been totaled. Was it Oberto's?
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Okay, so Larry
That's
Oberto
exactly right.
had a huge crash at Atlanta. Everybody thought he was, going to be really mangled up, and he was okay in the end, sort of.
Yeah.
And he that chassis was in your basement like still kinked.
Well, Mike Johnson was running the car, and we were all buddies at the time.
Yep.
And before they put the fire out on that thing, I was like, "Oh,
How do I
simulator,
get
simulator."
that? I live right up the road.
There it
Yeah.
is. And when they stripped it, it was out back of Mike's shop. I was like, "Are you gonna do anything with that?" He's like, "No." I said, "It's gone."
Cool. Yeah. Don't expect it to be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
And this is like early mid '90s before like simulators.
It
were
was
the thing
late
to have.
90s.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to play Grand Prix Legends on it, and that was like the game.
Yeah.
You know, it's still the game.
Yeah.
But I remember that was like the ticket. So we hit up Eric Foss a while back to kind of see. We're like, what's some good bow dirt, and he's like, ask him about showing up to the mall and seeing somebody on the sim or on race driving.
Yeah.
That was
That's
the
right.
arcade game, right?
Yeah.
And he said that he would show up and you'd already be on it, and he would know to go home because that was a game you could keep going if you did well.
Yeah, if you were good, you could just keep doing lap after lap after lap until you were just tired of it.
Right.
And so if I'd show up and he was there, it'd be like, oh, I got to go
There's-
get lunch or something.
yeah.
And if he'd show up and I was there, it was kind of the same thing. But he and I became buddies. That was like 1992.
Sure. Yeah. And so now he's last year's champion in ST and currently, in the series that one of the, you manage and keep an eye over. Is that weird having to watch us race and like see us do stupid stuff and have to give us penalties or warnings or?
It's, the funny thing is about stuff like that is I try not to ask. So I say I try, and therefore at times I do. But I try not to ask. The beauty of endurance racing is there's two drivers in a car. And so I barely know car numbers on purpose. And so I rarely ever ask who's driving that car, who's in the car. For that reason, because who's driving doesn't matter. It's all just at face value. You look at an incident, who's driving doesn't really matter, with the exception of somebody that might be on probation or have really bad history.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I mean, I've told guys like Ed Brown in the past. He and I kind of became buddies when he was running in GT3, and then obviously he moved into ALMS at the time, and then Tudor now. I had told him a long time ago that. People know that we're kind of close, and therefore they immediately will have the perception that you might get away with stuff. And therefore, from my way of thinking, if it's even close with you, I'm going to penalize your ass
Yeah,
because
'cause you've got to
I'm
set
just
that
going to make
precedent.
the statement.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same way I feel about whether Eric Foss is the example right now.
Sure.
The guy's been a guy of his skill and talent totally off the radar. I've never had to deal with anything
Right.
that he's done on track. So that's the comfortable situation for me, or the part of it for me, is that the guys that I know well, that I've spent so much time, that have made a career out of this, doing it for 20 plus years, they're completely off my radar anyway, so it's kind of a moot point.
Yeah, copy that.
Does that sort of go the other way, where maybe curtails you from becoming friends with guys you haven't met?
I don't necessarily try to buddy up to too many people at the track.
Sure.
So in terms of friendships or personal relationships, it's kind of just it's a non-issue.
Sure.
So Sean doesn't know much about your background. I have a little bit more information just from knowing you for so long, but just talk us through the first 5 years of you getting started in racing, because I don't think you did karts. I don't remember if you did karts.
Did karts.
You did karts?
I
Okay,
did
yeah.
karts.
Foss couldn't remember either.
Yeah, so my dad was racing when I was a little kid. He was always a car guy. He was always into it, and I was way more into it than he was. I knew everybody and everything about racing.
And that was in the Atlanta area?
No,
Were
that
you
was
guys
right
still
here in Houston.
Okay.
Yeah, right here. Actually,
Is
I
this
was-
where you grew up?
Yeah, I grew up real close to here. This is kind of the epicenter of where I grew up and went to elementary school, middle school, high school.
Was all in.
And actually, this road that's just on the other side of this building behind my house, when they first paved it and it was not open to the public yet, I used to rock it down there on my go-kart. And so Enclave Parkway is what it's called. I blazed a trail down there on my go-kart back in the day when I was tuning it and getting ready when I was 11, 12 years old.
Nice.
So my dad was racing. I was into it. I started racing karts when I was 12. Actually did kind of some outlaw races in his cars when I was 15. And then when I finally turned 18 and I was old enough, I started racing in SCCA.
Okay. And that was like open wheel stuff.
I did some spec racer, then I did Formula Ford 2000. The cool thing about when I did Formula Ford 2000 is there was actually 3 Pro Series. The second year I did it, there was a USAC Series, which is really now the USAC Series and the SCCA Series are really kind of what combined to create the current US F2000 championship. But there were 2 of those, so kind of pick and choose the good races to go to. And then there was also new for '94, the Hooters series.
Right.
The owner of Hooters started this series that was stock cars and Formula Ford 2000s on small ovals in the southeast, and that's where I really, had the best success of all of my driving.
And this is mid-'90s, right? So the crop of guys that came through at that time is pretty crazy.
Yeah, in '94 and '95 in Formula Ford 2000. I could list off guys, but I remember in the Hooter series, Anthony Lazzaro, he won the championship and I was second. He won 4 of the races, I won 3. Who else was in there? Greg Tracy, who now does a bunch of stunt driving and commercial stuff. He won a race.
Off-road guy too.
Yep.
Some stuff
Ernest Sykes was a really good friend of mine in Atlanta. He actually was paralyzed temporarily, thankfully, in an accident the year before at Road Atlanta, right in front of me, actually, which is where he always was.
And the way Eric described it was like you didn't show up as some hired gun with some other pro team, and you were trailing your own cars and wrenching on your own cars and kind of making it all work.
There's a guy named Paul Taylor who's a head mechanic on the Delta Wing now.
Yeah.
And he was literally fresh off the boat from England. They showed up at Primus Racing, who were the importers of Van Diemen at the time. And he was just kind of one of those guys that Ralph Furman would send over a few years, go to the U.S. and check it out. And now 20 some odd years later, Paul's still here. But he's the guy that I kind of inherited and gave whatever money I could every week so he could just eat and survive in the U.S.
Wow.
And he and I literally would load that thing up. We'd prep it all hours of the day and night, load it up, and head off to the races. So it was literally a 2-man show. The beauty of it back then is that we could do a race for probably about $3 or $4 grand, and it was $10,000 to win.
Yeah.
We actually made money that year, just him and me, just cruising around the country.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Partying, racing,
And
whatever.
you did really well in the ovals, if I recall.
Yeah.
So you're obviously getting to meet Hooters girls for Trophy Girls. Is that what they were doing back
It
then?
happened, yeah.
So so that was probably a pretty nice way as a young guy to kind of get some dates.
Very, yeah.
Yeah, probably made it pretty easy.
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah.
How he quiets down in that moment.
He's like, I don't want to talk about that.
Moving on.
I don't know why he's giving me that weird face. So you go from Hooters, which is basically now the F2000 series, and
Right.
you get to do some Indy Light stuff. And that was kind of where your career as a driver slowed down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it one of the typical tales of motorsports where, just the money wasn't there and writing's on the wall? Or
A great part of, being involved, the people you meet and just the acquaintances that you keep over the years is working at Road Atlanta forever, which is a part of the story that was kind of missed. But at some stage during my driving career, just to stay around racing, I moved to Atlanta to start teaching the school there. And the years that I started doing Formula Ford 2000, a driver showed up at Road Atlanta for the runoffs by the name of Lynn Breesley. And she was a heck of a driver, and I did some coaching with her, got to know her, got to be really good friends with her, and her dad happened to be a part owner in a small IndyCar team. And he was kind of done being a partner and wanted to have his own program, so he started an Indy Lights program the following year, and that was the year after I had all that success in Formula Ford 2000 and on the ovals. So he brought me in to drive for him, and we did. I only ended up doing 2 races before he figured out that he didn't need to have some broke kid like me in the car, and found some money, and I was out. And after that, and a lot of oval experience, and we did a lot of testing on ovals in the Indy Lights car, and I loved it, and I just took to it. So I was working on just getting an Indy 500 deal together, and it just never played out, and I kind of got over it and decided I love racing. I've been around it all my life. I need to find other things to do.
Right.
And not too long thereafter is when the officiating stuff kind of just fell into my lap.
And you've been fortunate enough to make a career in racing still, past the driving part, but obviously you're able to race with a lot of good guys and beat a lot of good guys, but it sounds like you didn't come from a lot of money. Do you ever look back and see some of the guys you're able to race with and kind of, I could get that guy? Or
There was that for a while. You see people that you could beat, and they're on track, and then you have to look at racing and appreciate its business virtues over its sport virtues, and realize that people that have the means or the business savvy to make deals happen. That's really what it's more about. And I saw too many people that I worked with or I was close to that got completely dragged down in the negativity of bitterness of people that they raced with that went on further than they did. And I didn't want to let that negativity or bitterness get me down. And so I just stayed motivated to allow my career path to take me wherever it would end up going. I knew from the time that I was growing up not far from here when I was 5, 6, 7 years old that that's all I wanted to do.
Right.
So now I can look back at the last 30 years of my life and what I've been doing and what I always wanted to do and say it's been absolutely successful.
So I guess people, most people know you for the race officiating. They know, some people know about the driving history, but there was this whole Atlanta period where you were with the schools and sort of making ends meet. Kind of where was this in sort of the career path?
So once the Indy Lights thing came to an end, which was 1995, I hate to say the last time I competed in a race was actually 20 years ago. So like I kind of said earlier, I knew that I just wanted to stick with whatever came my way and stay involved around it. So at that point, I took to being really active in teaching, did a lot of coaching, and did a lot of data coaching for guys back in those days.
Sure.
And really, in continuing to teach, there was a great program that they had at Mid-Ohio, which was the Mid-Ohio School, which was founded by Michelle Truman and Chris Neifel.
Sure.
And when I went to work for Chris Neifel the first time, he and I just completely jived.
And you're in Ohio at this point?
So I would travel up to Ohio just to teach schools, and they would bring in what I thought what certainly was a pretty stellar group of guys to work together. We had a great time and in the school and spending time together up there in Ohio. But Chris and I really took to each other. We became really good friends, and we worked really, really well together. We just agreed on a lot and saw eye to eye on everything. And he'd go way out of his way to help me. I'd go way out of my way to help him. And it wasn't long thereafter that, to me at the time, it seemed completely out of nowhere that IndyCar at the time, or maybe it was the iteration that ended up becoming Champ Car, came after him to be the race director.
Right.
And when he did that, I thought
this is 96,
this was actually 95, 96.
So it's just as the split is happening.
Well, 95, 96, 97 is when I really spent the time coaching, teaching, doing data acquisition. 97 was the first time I went to Mid-Ohio. And we worked together for quite a while because he was driving. Sooner thereafter, I should say, 98 is when the Corvette program started.
Oh, cool.
And he was one of the first drivers for that.
Yeah, right.
So he went off and did that, and I kind of took over, really being more involved in what his role had been at the Mid-Ohio School, which he was the chief instructor.
So he knew he could leave you to administer things.
And he more or less did, and there was a lot more to that story than that, but that's kind of the way it played out just in looking at the timeline. And then in 2001 is when he literally turned his back on the Corvette program. He opted out to go become the race director of IndyCar at the time.
Right.
And when he did that, I thought, that's kind of interesting. And funny enough, in 2002, guy that I'd driven for, I mentioned Primus Racing, John Betos, bought the Formula Ford 2000 series, funny enough, from the Andersons, who now own it again. But he took it over, and as soon as he did, he called me and said, I need a racer to be the race director, and I want you to be that guy. And so Chris Neifel, IndyCar race director, 2001. I was race director of Formula Ford 2000 in 2002, and after that 1 year of experience, he hired me into Champ Car into 2003. And it took off from there.
Is that a normal deal where somebody has the wherewithal to go, maybe our race director should be a racer? Because it seems like, some series don't always do that. And I'm sure there's good and bad to both directions, but it seems clear with you.
Yeah, there was definitely a movement at the time. Obviously, IndyCar at the time, Wally was getting to the point where he had basically threatened retirement for about 3 or 4 years in a row and was looking for a replacement.
Right.
And his racing.
This is with Champ Car at the time.
Yeah, Champ Car would probably be a better way to refer to it, because at that time there was an IndyCar. His racing experience was probably a little bit too far in the past, and they wanted somebody more current.
Sure.
And frankly, they just needed somebody younger.
Yeah.
And Chris, to his credit, stayed really dialed in with the powers that be in that organization, kind of unknown to me at the time.
Right.
But he positioned himself well, and they thought he was a natural, and he certainly was, and he did a good job. And to your question, there was definitely a movement at that time, pretty strong and pretty public, in a lot of different series to find officials and race directors that had a lot more current driving experience, and therefore find younger guys to fill those roles.
Sure.
I don't think the beauty of my job is that there's nobody putting their hand up to say, I want that job. So, there's a lot of things that I've done, whether it's driving or teaching or chief instructor, where guys will stab you in the back because they want your job, and here I'm totally safe. I don't even need to look over my shoulder because nobody wants to do the shit I do.
That's a great point. I haven't thought of that at all.
And just in that regard, when I was first asked to do it, I thought, there's nobody that does this. It's unique. It's different.
Yeah.
It's something that I think I can grasp and do, and nobody wants this job, so it's all me.
Now, do you think because you're a known figure in the sport, you have a racing background as a driver, that it might hurt you in terms of, I know you have really thick skin, so you're not too concerned with criticism, but it's almost, in my mind, sometimes it would be smarter if we didn't know who they were, because then you wouldn't know who to bitch about on Twitter, Instagram, whatever, with Beaux Barfield did this, and the guy's an idiot, he's got to get fired, as we've heard from IndyCar drivers that then 2 years later praised you when you left to go to another series. And if they didn't know who the one person was making the direct call, who do you complain about?
Yeah, it's a complicated answer, because I think that the whole situation that you described is certainly complicated this day and age with social media, because people have the information, they want more information, they're starving for it, they love this sport, they want to know who everybody is, and they're going to figure it out, and they're going to know. I think trying to remain somewhat anonymous while unrealistic is noble, but it's not going to happen. I don't give a crap what people say about my calls and what their opinions are. Everybody has an opinion. I watch football and I question every officiating decision that I see just because it's fun. So I get it. But in terms of people trying to get inside my head and understand what I'm thinking at the time that a call or a decision is made, most people, with all due respect, are completely clueless to what goes into those reviews and those calls.
Well,
and probably my best example of that is 2011 Edmonton IndyCar race. Brian Barnhart gets in the driver's meeting and says, if you cross this line on a defensive maneuver, you will get black flag.
Right.
And at the end of the race, Elio crossed that line in a defensive maneuver, and he penalized him.
Yep.
And so probably the bigger question when we get into officiating philosophy is that when he made that call, it was unanimously accepted by the drivers in the paddock. It was a great call. Brian's a great, great race official. He takes a beating, but I got nothing but full respect for that guy. It was unanimously rejected by the public.
Right.
So as officials, you have to look at, what do you want the on-track product to be? What do you want to call? How involved do you want to be in the competition?
Right.
And I think when you ask those simple questions, the answers become infinitely clear on how races should be called.
Right. Well, and there's sort of two philosophies that come at stake here. There's the public questioning the rule, but that's not what your guys' job is. Your job is to officiate that rule.
And my point to that, really, to just wrap it all up, is that Brian said exactly what he was going to do in the drivers' meeting, and nobody publicly took that information and said, you know what, for what was said in the meeting, that was absolutely the right call. It was just their opinion that drove that drove it.
Well, and back in the IndyCar day, you used to always say that it was a good day for you if you weren't part of the headline. And like I think about in the year that we just wrapped up in 2015, Circuit of the Americas, which has a ton of runoff room, ton of pavement, very easy for a driver to go wide, that sort of exceeds the boundaries of the track. And I think you guys, in a bold decision, said, you know what, we don't want to have to be part of this storyline. We'll just say you're not going to we're not going to officiate that, or we're not going to restrict that. And it seems to me like that's part of the consciousness of what you guys are doing, is making sure that if you don't have to enforce a rule, you'll make sure that it's the way it should be.
Well, it has to be logical. I mean,
Right.
my frustration going into CODA is I knew that if we did away with track limits, that it would look kind of silly on TV.
Right.
And that's ultimately what the perception was,
Right,
is it
right,
didn't
right.
look right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I knew that going in. But really, before you write a rule, or before you stand your ground, or before you draw a line, no pun intended, to say you can't cross this line,
Yeah.
you better be damn sure that you can enforce it. And you
Right.
can enforce it strongly and consistently.
Yeah.
And, I've seen people say it was a cop-out, it was lazy. I'll tell you, absolutely, we did not have the means to officiate that in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 places around the track
Right.
that we had to enforce it. So the 5 guys that are running nose to tail, 4 of them do it right and 1 does it
Yeah.
wrong and gets a little bit of an advantage, and we miss it, then what does
Well,
everybody
that's
say? Everybody
exactly
says
it.
screw it, and then the wrong guy ends up getting penalized, and it's controversy. We
Yeah.
completely, as a series, removed ourselves from the competition and let it play out on track. And
Yeah.
that by itself, all on its own, stripped down to its purity, is my officiating philosophy.
Absolutely. Well, we were talking about how we both agreed with that decision for exactly that reason.
And we saw
But-
the next day in the WEC race where
It
they
was
tried
a
to
train
enforce.
wreck.
They
It was a
had left, right, and
disaster.
center.
Part of my validation for that is that so many WEC drivers came up to me personally to say, you guys are doing the right thing, because we're getting screwed because they can't officiate it right. They're
Right.
making the threats and
can't.
they're acting like they can, but they can't.
Right.
And I could see that 3 days before it happened, that if we made that threat, there was no way. And they've actually created technology within their film and timing and scoring software to try to officiate it. So basically, they've said that, well, we've got a lame track. No offense, but
Fair
there it
enough.
is.
Yeah, I don't.
We have a lame track that has these these huge runoff areas where it's
Yeah.
difficult to define or enforce track limits. So rather than go and fix those tracks,
Right.
the FIA or the WEC has said, well, let's implement this program to officiate that. Well, wait, you don't write rules on top of rules is basically what it
yeah.
amounts to. They need to go fix the problem,
Sure.
not try
Right.
to officiate what the problem is.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And I think most of the drivers in the IMSA paddock were pretty happy with it, because in years prior, when they tried to enforce things like that at different tracks, like let's say the exit of turn 1 at Watkins Glen, that's always a big question mark. It was like, who got away with what?
Yep. Food's here. Hey, man.
So we ordered from Hungry's Cafe,
Yeah,
which is like a local spot for you.
it is. There's some significance there too, actually.
Let's hear it.
I worked as a waiter at this restaurant when I was in high school.
No way.
It's
Oh, really?
It's the only job I've had outside of motor racing.
Wow. So it's the last job you had outside of motor racing. What did you do there?
I was a waiter.
Oh, you're waiting tables.
Yeah.
My last job before racing was I was a cook in probably a place a little similar to
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
And you keep a relationship with him?
Yeah, really good friends with the owners.
Well, it's good to have
guys.
a fallback if it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
Well, I
This
don't know.
officiating thing didn't pan out for
Yeah,
me. I still got a
Well, I
relationship
mean, wait,
there.
did you leave or did they fire you?
I left.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so you're probably okay.
Yeah, there was, some other waiters like, this guy should be fired.
Like,
And
I don't
2
know if
years
you're,
later.
we're not sure if you're Hungry's
I don't know
material,
who
but
had the
IndyCar will
ball,
probably
right?
take you.
So one thing you kind of alluded to earlier is I give you a lot of credit because Twitter has kind of, and Facebook and Instagram or whatever, they've all kind of opened up this new opportunity for fans to engage and be part of the process like never before, which you want to say is inherently good, but the downside of that, in my belief, is that we've got this new kind of clinging to relevance that fans will have, where they want to be part of the conversation, whether they understand what's going on or not. And where I give you a lot of credit is that you have this amazing way to step in front of that, but in a way that I laugh. Like somebody will say, like, "Oh, Beaux Barfield did this," and you'll reply and be like, "Oh, here I am. So say something."
Yeah,
I like that.
I used to say a long time ago, I don't delete the haters, I retweet them. And that really pisses people off.
Oh, yeah.
Which
That's
is
been
absolutely.
my MO since I got onto Twitter. It's like, no, let's talk about it.
my problem with it is the difficulty that I have is there's such a butthurt, politically correct society somebody will just kick you in the balls while you're down. And
Sure.
if you say one thing that can be construed in a way that somebody's offended,
How can I
man,
use this against
it's
you?
hell to pay.
Yeah.
And so I've completely removed myself from it, and it's a shame because there was a time when I first got to IndyCar that my boss, to his credit, Randy Bernard at the time, he completely embraced, within reason, my activity on social media. And it was a good way to connect with the fans and give explanations, and like you say, just kind of stay ahead of it.
Yeah.
And then, you say one or two things and people get upset, and then
Right.
it's like, I can't go there anymore. So
Right,
the
right.
reality is I watch and I'll say a few things, but even now, my powers that be don't necessarily, they're okay with me being Beaux Barfield, but they're not okay with me being on Twitter as a race director.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
it's kind of frustrating because there's so many things, like you said, again, that you could kind of get ahead of, and you could kind of just put some explanations out there. But it's just,
It's all part of
it's
it.
not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of a controlled message they're trying to put
So,
out.
kind of going down that social media thing, we're just getting past the season finale at Petit Le Mans, and sort of a controversial race just because of the weather was so terrible, and that track itself has, a lot of elevation, a lot of rolling hills, which creates, rivers. And I think you guys, I can't think of another time I've seen a race director go out on track during a situation like that and then have trenches dug on the side of the race to direct water, which I was like, well, that's pretty cool. Instead of just giving up, they're literally trying to move the earth to fix the race. And then you just couldn't, it is what it is. It was pretty nasty. A lot of cars are getting wrecked, and you guys call it. 2 questions. Number 1, why was there no white flag? Because I just don't know. From what I understand, it was like, okay, checker.
For anyone who's asked me how that race ended, why it ended, I got a simple answer. Don't worry about it.
Actually,
Don't worry about it.
good enough for me. Second,
No, the reality is, for me, we needed to maintain the integrity of the competition. And so we had a lot to deal with before we could throw the checkered flag. And a lot to deal with means you're circulating behind the safety car. And circulating behind the safety car, people are running out of fuel. Not opening the pits, people are wondering what you're doing. Or maybe they shouldn't be, because ultimately for me, if I would have opened the pits, for example, it would have lured a lot of people in that thought we were going to restart.
Right.
So we maintained the integrity of the competition because I knew, and looking ahead, that if we get a full course yellow, which I'm just waiting for it to come based on the trend of the day, if we get a full course yellow in this magic window of what I'm seeing on radar, and we're losing daylight, then visibility with the current conditions on track with the rain, coupled with the lost daylight, there's no way in good conscience I'm going to restart this race.
Right.
And therefore, there's no way I'm going to restart the race.
Right.
So I don't get micromanaged. I'm empowered to do my job, and that's what I love most about where I am right now. But there's a lot of people that need to know before I do that. And meanwhile, as all that's getting aligned and in place, and oh, by the way, now the podium needs to be ready.
So to interpret this, you need to set up the podium part of the deal.
The podium
prep
needs to be
all
set
the-
up 2.5 hours early.
Right.
So, and meanwhile, I'm getting instant messages. Are you going to open the pits? Why aren't you opening the pits?
Right.
We're running out of fuel. And I'm thinking, okay.
And just to put that in context, there's an instant message system that all the teams in the
Yeah.
paddock have the right to race control going, what's up, or well, I don't want to have this penalty or whatever. So it's a way to communicate direct with the tower without having to go to an official for every issue.
Yeah, and I was a part of that early on when we introduced it, like 8 years ago
In
or
American
so.
Le Mans, right?
So there was a lot to get in order, and as soon as I got every last person informed, and there was no more homework or side work to do, it was checkered flag time.
So you're literally
and
spending this entire caution just trying to deal with the whole
Literally, people ask me, why didn't you let us know about the checkered flag sooner? Because the moment I had everything done is the moment I announced it to the world.
Right.
And the safety car happened to be under the bridge driving down the hill. The starter didn't even have his checkered flag out, for example.
Right, 'cause
Nobody
didn't know.
knew.
Right.
And so it was orchestrated quietly behind the scenes, but not outwardly and publicly, where people could either strategize or the
Yeah,
integrity of the competition the way it was
Pull
going
into
to be
the pits
affected.
accidentally or whatever it is.
right.
So, Twitter, post Petit Le Mans 2015, and this is I don't care about the tweet. I don't think Ryan cares about the tweet either, but it speaks to a larger picture. You want to?
I was going to say, I want to bring it up because I think it's important, because the one person that was getting called out is really Beaux, even though they didn't say Beaux.
Right.
But I do think he kind of answered the question that's coming next, is that he doesn't need to get on Twitter to defend his actions.
No. That's not where I'm going.
Okay,
with this. So,
all right.
Post Petit Le Mans, Cooper McNeil, who, let's just put it out there, his father is WeatherTech, right? Puts out this tweet. Sorry, I don't know how to not laugh at it. That basically says, like, I'm not happy with the race being called, and neither is my old man. And essentially saying, our sponsoring family is not happy with IMSA right now. Now, I don't give a crap about the tweet, and I'm pretty sure you don't either. But there are, especially with sports car, but really any series, there are so many other factors beyond who's in the car at the time and what's going on. I don't know if you have to deal with that administrative side, but like when somebody like that calls you out, I know it's not affecting your decision, but yet you have to deal with it. So what happens when I don't care if it's Ed Brown at Patron or Cooper McNeil with WeatherTech, what happens when these sort of deals go on?
I got an email with that screenshot of the tweet as soon as it went out, and I looked at it. And somebody else in the commercial side of the business asked me about it soon thereafter.
Sure.
And I told this person in our organization, I said, 2002 was the first year I officiated.
Yeah.
It was 2002 that I implemented my own rule, which is I don't talk to drivers' fathers. and I told them in this case,
right.
I would make an exception if somebody wants an explanation.
Right.
Sure.
And so if somebody's looking for an explanation, fine. If you want to walk into my office and tell me how to officiate races,
right.
you're at the wrong place.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that happened, and I was curious about it because I just said in kind of the last segment that maintaining the integrity of the competition was very important to me.
Yeah.
And I thought we had that pretty well under control. So I looked back at the position that car in question finished, and I looked at his last pit stop, and it would have taken about 8 cars to crash for that car to go anywhere.
To be in the hunt. Absolutely.
So it was. I get it. You have to, you have your frustration.
Right.
Had the competition played out for another 2.5 hours, could that story have been decidedly different? Absolutely.
Sure.
But in terms of what we're putting forward on track and safety being the guide for what we do, I have absolutely no issues with the decision that we made and how that race was managed.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the car had been fighting for the lead in the last hour, and when the checker was thrown out, they were about to see the Magnus car run out of fuel or any car, in front of them, then I could kind of understand some frustration. But I was surprised to see, I think the car was 6th when they crossed it. Yeah.
But again, to me, the sort of challenge I would imagine you have, I don't care about him specifically or that car having, because they were not winning the championship. But sports car in particular, but this is true for IndyCar, NASCAR, whoever, there are considerations that maybe you don't have to make, but a lot of people may perceive that you have to make when it comes to the competition of a race. That, that guy's dad sponsors a series, and clearly he's favoring them. Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, and to walk back to an extent the comments that I made earlier, if there's a driver, if there's a team owner, if there's a team manager that wants an explanation, I'll sit down and walk you through exactly what I did, my thought process, what we looked at, how it pertains to the rule book. Partners are a little bit different breed because that gets completely out of my department, and that's dealt with by a completely separate group of people.
Sure.
But when it starts to get intertwined, where you have relatives of drivers, then I'm willing to sit there and be completally transparent and say, here's exactly what we went through.
So you
that's
want to honestly look me in the face and say there isn't a closed room, cigars go in session where they go, Ferrari has to win.
Absolutely not.
You're saying that's never happened? That's weird, because I saw on Twitter that totally happens all the time.
Well, then it must be true.
Right.
I'm lying to you.
So I was kind of explaining to Sean, you're one of those guys that really appreciates like stuff. Like, you always have cool stuff. You got the bikes. I know you've been a watch guy for a long time. Since I met you, I met you actually at the Goldspeed karting track. I was hanging out with Workman, and you drove up in
66 Cadillac.
That's right.
That was my car of choice back then.
Yeah, top down, stogie out the side. He's like, "What's up, guys?" And I'm like, "Who the fuck is this guy? Like, what is happening here?" I think you might have been wearing like those old like dress shoes, like with the white fronts.
Yeah, that was
awesome.
Absolutely.
And I'm gonna guess a wallet chain. Like a
Nah,
you
pretty
sure?
unlikely. I've never
No?
had a wallet
Okay.
chain. I considered it riding my Harley because I almost lost my wallet recently, but I don't think I could pull that off. I can pull a lot of stuff off.
You get
but
away
wallet
with it.
chain?
You get away with it.
I don't know.
Yeah, since I met you, you had the Cadillac, you had Agent Orange, which I was surprised you still had. I thought you got rid of that thing.
Yep, I'm trying. Buyer. It's for sale.
Don't stop.
yeah, right.
I've been like looking for something kind of like that. You know what I
Oh,
want? I
man.
want like an old '60s Bronco.
The 60s Broncos are awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at Agent Orange right now. What is this?
Agent Orange is a 1968 Suburban. The cool thing about a '68 Suburban is it's a 3-door, so it's got doors on the passenger side, front and back door on the passenger side, but only a driver's side door. And that's so like when you're parking on the street in town, the kids can't get out on the street
Interesting.
side.
Okay.
So it's just a unique thing, and I saw it and had to have it, and I've had it for 10 years now, and now
parent, we've
and-
got the car for
yeah,
you.
no, and it's totally pimped out. It's got it's like a limo feel inside. You
Right.
sit way in the back, gangster style. But when I saw it, I had to have it. Now 10 years later, if I knew of a bridge that went straight down into a ravine, it would be there. It's one
So
of
you're
those.
saying it's priced to sell.
It is priced to sell. So I've gotten into this motorcycle craze later in my life,
Yeah.
and that thing represents about 5 motorcycles that aren't here right now.
I hear you. Like
So-
I'll be looking on Craigslist. I'll come across like an old Bronco or an old S10 or something or C10, and I'm like, okay, I could get that, or like 3 CB550s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I vote for CB550s.
Yeah, I just bought a '73 CB500. My
Yep.
dad and I are doing up to like a brat style bike. I wanted to bring it to Petite, but it was like just too nasty and not going to be done. So
Oh, nasty is good though.
Nah,
The
it'll be-
chrome and restored vehicles are way overrated.
yeah, no, you're gonna like it.
Nice.
Yeah, so we walk in. You've got your a lot of the fans have seen your golf inspired rat rod bike basically, and then you got a Harley, and then a couple other. What else you got over there?
So
You got a Senna bike.
the Senna bike
Yeah.
is cool. So I've got my '97 Harley, which is kind of stretched out, raked out, big front wheel, all that kind of trend. Shout out to one of my old racing buddies, Mr. Paul Tracy, for hooking me up with the cool stuff for my bike.
Right.
Nice.
And then I've got a couple of old Honda CBs that I just cafe'd out. One of them, what is it? Actually, a CX 500, which is it's kind of a unique Honda from the mid 70s. People called it a Honda Guzzi because it's got a transverse V-twin, so the cylinders stick out by your knees.
Right.
Nice.
And it was more of a touring bike, shaft drive, water cooled, and a good friend of mine that I reconnected with a few years that I just lost a couple years ago. He told me, never do a cafe bike out of a shaft drive water cooled. And so I found that, and I was like, oh, it's on.
That's what's
I'm
happening.
gonna make this bike badass.
Yeah.
And so whenever I start building a bike, I want to have some kind of the word tribute. People love it or hate it, and my bikes are all tribute bikes.
Right.
Sure.
And so the Golf bike is important because it's got the number 20, which Steve McQueen drove in the
Yep.
movie Le Mans, and that's important to me because it's the very first race car I ever saw in my life when I was 4 years old, watching
cool.
that on TV. So there's that significance. I got a serious Steve McQueen bromance, as people say. And so the cafe bike, when it started to come together, I always wanted to do the John Player special.
Oh, yeah.
And just the black and gold is so
Yeah.
classic. And when I started thinking about that, I'm thinking back to the 70s, like Emerson Fittipaldi and whoever else drove that car. And it came to me one day that pretty much, I mean, so many people's hero in this generation of racing is Ayrton Senna.
Sure.
And it just came to me one day when I was taking it to paint that Ayrton Senna won his first Grand Prix in 1985 at
yeah,
Estoril
delivery.
in a John Player special.
Yeah.
And the number 12 jumped out at me. I knew
Yeah.
he was number 12 that day. So it's my Senna bike. It's got
That's cool.
it's got the number 12. It's got the John Player special. The paint job on it is outrageously awesome, and it had these goofy little reflectors on the side that have just where the radiator shroud is.
Yeah.
These goofy little reflectors. I'm like, what the heck do I do with these? And so I had my pinstriper do the stripes from Senna's helmet on it, and it's
Yeah.
real subtle, and it's a perfect tribute. It's a totally awesome
Looks really
bike.
nice.
It's Sunday night, so we got and in the fall, so we got Sunday night football on. You were talking about watching a little bit earlier. You know, like any fan, we've got calls we do or don't agree with. Do you find yourself more sympathetic to like an NFL ref or an NBA ref or something like that than you think the average public viewer?
Absolutely, because people are too quick to to hate and question. And the reality is, if you look at your questioning of an official, back up a step, because I bet it has a lot more to do with your personal interest in the situation than it has to do with any principled guidance.
Right.
And so if you think there's a lame call on TV, it all has to do because your team got a bad call.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because the call itself was bad. And so for me, watching the NFL is very intriguing because, okay, there is replay now.
Right.
And they use it often, but they don't use it every play like we do in racing. And so for these guys to make those real-time calls, I'd love to see anybody that questions one of those officials go stand your ass down on the field and watch this fast as shit action live and make the call.
Make the same call.
Make the call. Good luck. Have fun with that. These guys, they're at the top of their game. They know they know the deal. It's not just, some old fat guy that goes stands out there for the hell of it on weekends. They know their stuff and they do a hell of a job.
We were actually we just had lunch with Varsha, and he was talking about sort of that TV relationship between race control and what they catch, and and the way he put it is he never wants to be responsible for somebody's race getting changed because of something he notices that maybe you guys didn't. What is that TV interface like?
It's fantastic. I just got a call 2 days ago from the producer Greg Oldham to thank me for the efforts that we make in race control to communicate with them and keep them in the loop on everything that we do.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very important because I've been a part of race control teams, or I've been a part of race series before, where there was this combative relationship between TV and race control, and it's very unhealthy.
Absolutely.
Because what are we all
You're
here to do?
supposed to be working together, sure.
We're all. That's exactly what I told him. I said, it's you thank me, and I'm glad I'm appreciated, but ultimately we're pulling the same direction.
Yeah.
We all want this to look good on TV, so whatever my part is in contributing to that, I'm willing to go the extra mile. So it's we have a meeting every single race where I sit in there and talk to all the on-air talent and the producers and everything, and discuss what we're like. Basically, go through my driver's meeting notes and talk about anything that we are planning or anticipating in that event, anything that needs to get wrapped up from the previous event and on. So it's a really good relationship. I had a similar relationship with my TV guys the previous 3 years at IndyCar. So I gather from how much both groups have communicated to me that they appreciate what I do, that it's not what they're used to in terms of that officiating interface that they get or involvement.
Are there things that you can see in the control room that TV can't see, or vice versa? Something like that. I mean, it's a very specific question to IMSA, I guess, but
it's interesting to me that once upon a time, when I first started officiating, when you first start officiating, you have this noble desire to see everything and call everything. Right. And frankly, it's impossible.
Absolutely.
And is that a cop-out? No. For my officiating style now, I don't think it's a cop-out at all. And I had heard that a certain race series at the time, all they watched was program. So,
explain what that means,
program is the actual TV feed that the consumer gets at home,
so to speak.
Whereas,
not the 17 cameras that you can see at any one time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have every single one of those cameras live at any given moment rather than just program. And it was interesting to me that I heard this group watch program only, and I thought, well, that's lame. What are they going to see? What are they going to catch? Because all they cared about is what the people at home were seeing and hearing.
Right.
And I think there's a lot to that, back to an earlier point that I made, which is you have to be conscious of the product that you're putting on track.
Right.
What's it look like? What do you want it to look like? And so the important part for me to answer your question is that there's things that TV might see that we didn't, just because of a camera angle or what they're focusing on, and they start discussing it. And that discussion of what they're putting out on the air doesn't come to us.
Right.
So we don't have that real feel for the on-air or the live product that the consumer at home is seeing. And that has been problematic for me in the past, where my solution to it was to have one of my stewards listen to program. Only because program audio. So in one ear they're listening to what the commentators are saying live. So if there is anything that we missed that they thought was controversial, we can either send them back a quick explanation, or we can say, you know what, there's something that we might have missed. We need to see it because the whole world knows about it and we don't.
Yeah.
And that sounds like either tunnel vision or we're not conscientious in race control. There's just things that get our attention that we might be drawn to, focusing on something different than what you see at home that could very legitimately cause us to miss something.
So we do this pass it along segment where every guest we have asks a question of the next guest. And so very much along those lines when we told Bob that you were our next guest, he had a very specific question related to this for you. You have it with you?
Yeah, so Bob's question. Yeah, so Bob's question was, what is the one thing that TV announcers do that drives you crazy? And he wasn't specific to sports car racing or racing in general.
I wonder if he's trying to bait me to throw down on Calvin Fish or something.
So yes.
Let's assume he is.
No, Calvin was in that group at Mid Ohio. We go way back. I always like to give Calvin a shot when I can, but he's a good dude. You know, this is a difficult question because honestly, I've worked such a good relationship with those guys that there's nothing that commonly, consistently happens that really sticks out in my mind. What I do have difficulty with is sometimes they'll go too far down the path of, much like we talked about fans basing everything off their own personal beliefs or opinion rather than what the rule book says or what we explain we're going to do. I think it's fair. It's absolutely fair and appropriate for a commentator to interject an opinion, but then you have to back that up with the facts of why the officials are calling it that way, or base it on what the rule book says or what was discussed in a driver's meeting. I see that happen too often, and you know, there's a right and wrong way to do it. If that opinion is backed up with all the things I said, fine. If it's just put out there for the sake of stirring the pot, that's not doing us any good. And I'm saying that really, I'm saying it more from a race control perspective than I am anything else. Too many people think just controversy is okay, but when the controversy is reflected on the series itself, then it weakens the series and people get turned off of it. And so I've seen that happen too often. That's very disappointing and frustrating. Whereas, you know, if two cars got together, for example, and it was a questionable situation, there was a culture too long in IndyCar where it's, race control should have done this. You know what? Why are you making it about race control when the reality is it's between these two drivers? What does this mean about these two drivers going forward, contesting the championship, or what payback might be at the next race? That's the controversy people want to hear, not, the series screwed it up again. And you can take that exact same situation and you can make it a positive or you can take it a negative. And I think too often TV, from my experiences, misses some of those opportunities.
2012 was a sort of a new era for IndyCar. New car. Brian Barnhart was no longer with the series, or at least not in that capacity.
Not in that capacity.
Excuse me. You know, Randy Bernard was kind of now in what we would consider sort of his prime in terms of having control of that series. And here comes this sports car guy. It seemed to me from the outside that it probably wasn't the most pleasant experience to be a part of. My time there, I think, was very productive. I look at it as an absolute success. There were controversial calls, and I think more to my earlier point, I think it was more of a controversial philosophy, or maybe the lack of acknowledgement of a true officiating philosophy that's going to guide this series into the future. And I came in with a less involved approach of over managing the competition on track, and that was received well, and it went well. And we did have a couple controversies, and you're gonna have them. But overall, the time there was successful. It was good. It was positive for me. It's what I wanted to do. It's what I felt like in terms of where my career path had taken me. I was the right guy for the job. And you know, with management changes, that just completely collapsed. So can I interpret that, please, or no? Or are you going to shut me down?
I figured I'd put it out there to see if you had any more questions.
So let me. So who else left? So I'm guessing you and Randy obviously got along pretty well.
Randy was a good leader. He left
Yeah.
me to do my thing. You know, he's the guy that's the executive that understands the commercial aspects and
Right.
and the outside the box way of thinking that's going to drive this series into the future.
Right.
Not meddle and micromanage the officiating.
Right.
He wouldn't know much about what that was going to entail.
Right.
So he had his questions. He needed his explanations. But other than that, I was completely empowered to do the job that they hired me to do.
And he was effectively let go by the controlling board of the series. What do you think the reasoning was behind that? And if you don't want to answer, don't answer.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, there's just too many politics at
Yeah, I
play,
hear.
and there were some things happening behind the scenes business-wise
Sure.
that concerned a lot of people, and I think it was a concern to the extent that the few people that started to bring it to light,
Right.
it just grew legs, got blown out of proportion. From what I understood at the time, Randy had said some things about not necessarily being too interested in extending his contract,
Sure.
and so all that kind of played in, and it's a damn shame because I think if he were still there, it would be potentially in better condition than it is now.
Sure. Derek Walker just left IndyCar. Seemed, of course, after he decides he's leaving, it seems to be universally pretty liked and respected. Is there sort of an atmosphere within the IndyCar paddock that makes it very, if you're in a neutral position such as a race official, technical director, whatever it is there an atmosphere in that series that's particularly rough compared to others?
I think it is, and it's amazing to me that as the two series unified and became
Which was supposed to be a happy time.
well, it was supposed to be a happy time, but there's so many people loved kart and what it
Yeah.
was and what it did.
Yeah.
And what it did poorly was let too many people be involved in the decision process.
Yep.
And that culture is still a massive hangover in IndyCar today.
Okay.
And there's this feeling of entitlement from too many people about what needs to happen. How does it need to work? What does it need
Yeah.
to look like? And good luck getting those 20 or 30 people to agree on
Yeah, right.
anything, right?
And as opposed to Twitter followers, these people have a stake.
Yeah.
So they have to be listened to.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So.
So there's that culture that really still drives, and truthfully, a big part of it is how many IndyCar team owners are really making money off of IndyCar.
Right.
And so when you look at that, then even if you didn't necessarily embrace the kart model of
Yeah.
franchises and votes and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, you still have to be to some extent sympathetic to, and this goes for any race series,
Sure.
but you really have to be sympathetic when you know these guys are fully invested.
Right.
And what's their benefit at the end of the day?
Right.
They love it and they want to see it succeed for, whether that's going to drive them to good decisions or
Sure,
not so
sure.
good decisions. You have to say, you know what, they're vested enough that we have to sit down and we have to have this conversation, we have to listen, and we have to be responsive.
Right.
So it's just a difficult situation because the model is really completely broken right now.
In 2013, Grand Am had to ban a DP driver for a race or two who had some speed but was doing a lot of reckless things. He was a funded driver that was helping keep that team afloat, but they had to make the decision to kick him out. But that has a direct effect on one of your stakeholders in a team. Obviously, you need to make a decision for safety and integrity, but at the same time, that if a funded driver is banned, that has a very serious implication on its team owner. Does that ever play into what you guys do?
I mean, I'm sympathetic towards it because I understand that some of these decisions affect people's business and livelihoods and such. But ultimately, like I said, with safety being our primary guide, it doesn't put me in a different position. That's I don't want to cop out of this, but that's kind of an above my pay grade decision. Somebody else is going to have to sort that out.
That's totally fair.
Right? If I see somebody that's a jackass on track, I'm going to have to take action. And how
Right.
that affects other people down the road, then that has to
simply
be
can't be your
sorted with
concern.
after I take
Right.
my action.
Well, I know with a couple of the deals I've done, driver contracts have stated that if I'm banned for whatever reason and I had a sponsorship related to the program, the sponsorship would continue throughout the period that we signed the contract, whether I'm in the car or not. So on one hand, yeah, these guys probably need to think, hey, I don't want to kick someone out and have someone's livelihood be affected team owner wise, but at the same time the team owner should be the one saying, hey, if you do something stupid and you get kicked out, your sponsorship still continues for this program throughout that weekend, and we're going to put whoever we want in to make the difference. So I think that's not necessarily a race control thing, but I understand
It's
it's
don't
definitely
really-
still a thought process for sure.
I don't, penalizing people is not the joy of my job. It's not something.
Are you
that-
sure?
I thought it was.
Are you sure?
No, that's
Hold
not what I
on,
read.
hold on. I've got a point here. I had a great point
Let
here.
me finish.
So, it's just not one of those things that you appreciate, and that's what that's the main thing you're there to do. But after Ryan tells the story, it's in his contract. I want to be the guy that bans him for a race, so he's got to watch somebody else drive his race car.
Yeah.
That would just be awesome.
Oh, that'd be good for
Boom.
you?
yes.
You'd enjoy that?
Yeah, I think I
I
would.
bet you would.
Yeah.
I was talking to Sean on the way here about like things I want to know, and how often. So your right hand man in race control is
My right hand man is Paul Walter.
Paul Walter. Thank you. So
And I gotta say that sounds like a disservice. The guy, as a support and with his intelligence and his knowledge of the rules and his presence, everything is just I couldn't ask for a better guy.
I liked
It's
Paul
fantastic.
when he was in our series the last couple of years. I honestly think they had him a little bit overrun on things he was supposed to be doing. So I think you guys are a good partnership. My question to Sean on the way here when we were just kind of BSing about things that to converse about. How many times do you look at Paul off, not on mic and just say, "Did you see that? What an idiot!" Like how many times a weekend does that have in the various series?
Countless.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be just
mean,
like
that's an
because
easy
I
answer.
see stuff on track, and sometimes I do stuff on track, and I'm like, "No, man,
What
I
the
can't
heck?
believe I'm allowed to do this." Did anybody see that?
Yeah, we talked about how calm I am earlier, and I keep it. Besides calm, I keep it fun and funny in race control. Just keep everybody engaged with
Loose,
what's going
sure,
on.
yeah.
Very loose. And I can keep it loose because the people that we have in race control are the best. I mean, just the best. Everybody has their specific task, and they do it very, very, very well. And so we keep it light, and we watch these things, and we see stuff happen. So yeah, we try to have fun with it.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's good to know. I'll keep that in mind when I'm
We
throwing it off the road.
There were at least 2. You talked about instant message earlier, which again is just our direct private with every team manager in the in the pit lane, and only they can see it. At least a couple of times there was a simple WTF instant message sent from race control.
What's I supposed to do?
It happens, and when you get no response, they know exactly what you're talking about.
Just like a 10-4.
If you send a WTF and you get 3 question marks back, then it requires some kind of explanation. But when it's just crickets, it's like, okay, message received.
Yeah,
I
clearly
think
did.
that won't happen
Now
again.
we'll move forward.
Yeah, next.
That's excellent.
So, because it's Ryan and the guy who does a lot of the Magnus stuff, you're probably the only IMSA official that will ever be on this. Not in the sense that we would love to have more IMSA, but whatever. So I want you to represent IMSA on one very salient issue. I read this on Twitter all the time. Are you sure that when you guys are in race control, is Brian France and Mike Helton in there saying, how can we screw this up?
Wow.
I actually have a real question. Serious. No, this is a big thing, and I even joked about it. Were you at all concerned, and it kind of goes to Sean's joke, that letting a GT LM car win overall against the DPs, which are the France family's creation and obviously our main thing, were you concerned at all that there would be a phone call saying, hey, why did we let that happen? Is there anything we could have done differently? Because I think it ultimately comes down to like an open tire rule versus a spec tire rule kind of helped that GT LM car be so good in the rain.
For me, watching the race unfold, it didn't even factor in for me.
Right.
Much to not looking too much at car color or driver names or classes, this, that, or the other. From the way we officiated that race and the conditions that we have, it played out the way it was supposed to on the track. Mm-hmm. And whatever that looks like, if we're supposed to be involved or make decisions to change that, excuse me, I didn't get anything. And I don't have-
Right. Well, I honestly was happy that a GTLM car did win because I read some of the crap that people put online sometimes where it's completely a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, exactly.
NASCAR's out to kill everything.
And that drives me nuts.
And of course, like you said, Mike Helton.
Yeah, they're sitting there in race control,
they're
clearly
standing next to you, like, "Hey, Beau, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Let the DP win."
That is how it works,
or whatever.
isn't it?
I've seen Mike Helton 3 times this year. One time was I went up to his office in Daytona to introduce myself when I was new.
And you've been here how long?
No, this was early on in the year.
Okay,
This was probably about a year ago.
Oh,
actually,
okay,
it was
cool,
at the
cool,
end of last year.
Sure,
so
sure.
I'm saying in the last 12-month
Okay,
period.
sure.
And the next time he did a quick walkthrough, visited the 24-hour, basically make sure everybody's awake. And
Right.
I don't mean that like, hey, are you doing your job? Like, hey, anybody need a coffee?
Everybody cool? Yeah.
Sort of
Right,
thing.
right.
Which I saw him and didn't even speak a word to him. He was in, he was out. And then I saw him across the room at the banquet a couple of nights ago. He's assured me when I met him briefly that whatever we need in terms of support or whatever we've got, hands off to the extent that we're able to do our job.
Right.
I've had conversations.
So you have the audacity to claim that that IMSA could benefit from NASCAR's resources? Because that's crazy talk.
Here's the thing. I've been to Champ Car when it was independently its own deal,
And-
when it blew through $60 million in 1 year.
Awesome.
I've been in IndyCar where, business-wise, we've got, we had financial issues just because the business is upside down.
Yeah.
And then I come to this NASCAR-held IMSA.
Yeah.
And, everybody's got their negativity, their conspiracy theories.
Right.
And for what I felt in Champ Car offices and what I felt in IndyCar offices, the stability and the controlling in a good way
Absolutely.
presence that you feel when you're in Daytona is extremely comforting for a guy like me.
Yeah.
No
in
doubt.
terms of knowing that you can do something for a long time if you don't really completely
Do your
screw
job.
it up.
Yeah.
Knowing that you've got backup and support if it doesn't go great, and the resources that you talked about in terms of some of the stuff that we've talked about with development and crash testing, this, that, and
Right.
the other. We did a lot of crash testing at IndyCar, and it was expensive and it
Yeah.
was debilitating because financially we weren't in a great place. But what that means for us and what we have access to with I think they call it the Technology Center up in Charlotte.
Right.
It's a great presence. It's
Yeah.
very positive. I haven't encountered anything negative on that side.
Yeah, and I think that.
Not what I read on Twitter.
Well, right. There was a Facebook page that said you're wrong. So figure that out.
So, yeah.
Yeah, for all the times I get called wrong, I believe it.
So let's stop talking about racing. 'Cause
Sorry. Yeah, I always
it's-
drag it down.
It's boring. You used to have a bus.
I did.
What happened to that bus?
Oh man, the bus. Actually, I started telling somebody this story the other day because we were talking about putting a turbo diesel in the back of the Orange Beast.
Agent Orange, yeah.
Yeah. So the bus, I sold it, and
And it was like a Prevost, like an older.
an older
it'd
just
been converted.
conversion,
Yeah.
like an old MCI bus that was converted into this monster motorhome. Total kind of monster garage style, but that's beside the point. So this thing got some mods, got sold to a friend of mine actually that lived in California, and he hired a guy to jump in and drive it to him 3,000 miles cross country, and literally the thing was sitting up in Jackson County, Georgia. So they're going down 85 headed towards Atlanta, and the air system malfunctions. No big deal, right? Except that the air controls the throttle, and for some reason the fail-safe was that it went full throttle. It controls.
Yeah.
It
Might as well,
As you do,
You don't want to
right.
walk away from the crash.
Yeah.
You know, let's
It's got
finish
to be
it
fine,
off.
all right.
Obviously, on a bus like that, it controls the brakes, and obviously the fail-safe wasn't for the brakes to engage; it was for them to no longer function.
Right.
And oh, lo and behold, it also controlled the kill switch, so they couldn't shut the power off to the thing. So now, and also, I think the governor
Why not?
Yep.
Why not? Throw that in there just for good measure and storytelling. So, the fastest I ever got the damn thing going downhill was like maybe 68.
Right.
And this dude's doing 90 down 85 headed into Atlanta traffic.
Might as well be on fire.
No, he wishes. he'd have been happier if it was. So no brakes, full throttle, all the bad stuff. And, he's, as the story goes, he pulled off one off ramp just to see if he could do something, and just completely Dukes
speed.
a hazard
Yeah.
over the off ramp and back down the on ramp and got back on 85. And couldn't figure out how to stop it or to do anything. He's calling his family to tell him goodbye.
Right.
I mean, it's a dramatic, ugly
plane's
situation.
going down.
Yeah,
Plane's
yeah.
going
And
down.
so he finally laid the thing over.
Wow.
In the median.
Just let's recap for a second.
Let's
You
recap.
laid the thing over. It's not a motorcycle.
Yeah.
It's a tour
It
bus.
was,
Like it's a bus.
It's kind of one of those. It's like a boat. The happiest 2 days of a boat owner's life: the day you buy it, the day you sell it.
Right.
I'm glad that thing was out of my possession, but I'm just so pissed I wasn't there to experience
see
that whole
it,
thing.
just to see it.
Because I would have just been like, cigar lit. I'm headed to
Here it
Atlanta.
goes.
Here we come.
Feet up on the dash.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
All right, this is it. It's been a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when you were telling us that story at the school one day. We were just crying, laughing.
Believe it or not, the thing still made it to California.
No
and
way.
and it lives with its owner that acquired it from me over 10 years ago.
Wow.
Wow.
Man.
He was okay, obviously.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm scarred for life emotionally, apparently.
Hates Atlanta.
Yeah.
So you got into guitars. When I first met you, I don't remember you being really into them at all, and you've recently got into them.
Not at all. In fact, it's you idiots that would have these parties at Andy's
right.
house and we'd play Guitar Hero, and I was like, well, that's totally cool, and I love rocking out, but I need to get a real guitar. Funny enough, back in those days, for some of the stuff the way the whole story plays out from its roots is that Guitar Hero was definitely a latch from you guys,
Yeah.
which is totally awesome.
I think Foss got us into it, and then I couldn't put it down.
No, it was ridiculous. And then so after that, and that same time, the programs that we did at Panos, we did for year one. And that's why I ended up buying the Orange Beast.
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
I had to have a 60s vehicle. Year one provides aftermarket equipment for restorations for every 60s and 70s vehicles you can imagine. And one of their guys that they were supporting big time back then was Chip Foose.
That's right.
Okay.
And funny how this is going to lead to a guitar story, but Chip Foose did a big charity fundraiser poker tournament. So it was
Okay.
the poker thing.
Right.
It was the whole... That was the whole thing. One of their other guys that they supported, like Chip Foose, was Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
Okay.
So I went to this charity poker function in Georgia, and our gift was a Fender Strat.
Oh, nice.
And so that thing just hung on my wall
Yeah, it's just
forever.
like a trophy.
And I moved back to that was when I was still living in Georgia, and I moved back to Texas. And I was sitting here after I got a lot of work done on this place after I bought it, and I'm like, I need a new something to do.
Right.
And I picked up that guitar and started playing it, and that was 6 years ago. And now 15 guitars later,
Sure.
and drum sets and
Yeah.
amps and.
It's the first thing I
just
saw when I walked in.
everything.
I was like, okay, I see a rifle, a pool table, and guitars and a drum set.
Welcome.
I'm home.
Welcome to Texas, son. Welcome to Texas.
Where's my room?
What else? Yeah. Yeah, there's guns elsewhere, but, don't let that be a threat. Or is that politically correct to talk about?
I think in Texas you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
To anybody.
Damn right. Jesus. It's about time. It's the way it should be. So the guitar thing, it's funny because I reconnected with my buddy Tony a few years back that just left. His son, same thing, Guitar Hero, 18 years old, self-taught, and this guy absolutely rocks.
Yeah.
And so he just laughs at us. He won't even help us. We're just a lost cause for
Right,
him. He's
yes,
like,
don't
don't
even
even
waste
waste
his
my
time.
time. Exactly. And then meanwhile, I reconnected with another friend of mine who, funny enough, we were really good friends in high school because he knew I was a car guy and he knew I was going to be a racer, and we hung out because of his car thing. And then as we lost touch for 20 years and then our paths reconverged, he started a Pink Floyd cover band.
Of course.
And it is totally awesome. And he lives up in Dallas and kind of does some stuff all over Texas and Louisiana. But between my friend Tony's son and Tony plays, and this friend of mine and his Pink Floyd cover band, I completely latched onto David Gilmour.
Okay.
Because he's just the most rocking guitarist in my
Yeah.
mind, and for skill, talent, and just his own thing. So I've told people, actually, I don't get starstruck. I've met a lot of really cool people in my life, but if I saw David Gilmour in the flesh, I would cry like a schoolgirl. I guarantee you, I couldn't control myself.
Yeah, you signed my panties. I mean,
Yeah, whatever.
Like,
yeah, I can get some.
Yeah, right.
For you. Yeah, whatever you like.
anything you want, sir. Step
So,
right this way.
so we play, and I'm a total hack, but I love it, and I figured some stuff out, and just totally self-taught, haven't taken any lessons, just listen to Pink Floyd, and it sounds like I'm in my sunroom doing a lot of drugs, listening to Pink Floyd, but Pink Floyd was just a thing that I kind of latched onto later in life, and especially when I started playing guitar, because you hear what goes on there, and it's like, wow.
The appreciation for
wow.
it. Yeah, it makes it
Unbelievable.
even better.
Yeah.
And then your buddy's got the cover band too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I actually got to get up on stage. Nobody was there except the band at House of Blues a couple weeks ago, and play while they were doing their sound check. And it
that's
was just
awesome.
like
The acoustics had to have been.
just his band was up there, and some friends were down in the pit, and there was nobody in there because it was pre-show. And I played, and I've never been so nervous in my
Sure.
life. Like,
Yeah,
nobody
absolutely.
gave a crap.
Right.
Nobody was
Yeah,
whatever.
don't even listen.
But some of the band guys came up to me afterwards, and they were like, "Man, you sounded pretty good." I was like, "Yeah, rock on."
So did you play the one thing you can play like no problem, or did you just like, oh, just free, just do whatever here, or were you like, I got to play Mary Had a Little Lamb 'cause that's my jam.
True, Mary Had a Little Lamb. No, it was all no. And the cool thing, for respect from them, is I played a bunch of my Pink Floyd stuff.
Nice,
So,
nice.
so Travis, my friend, was up on stage setting up, and he's got this Echoplex, which is an echo thing that Gilmour used back in the day, and I heard some stuff from it. My ears gotten really good from playing guitar, and I walked up to the stage. I'm like, "Is that right? Is that whatever?" And he's like, "No, I got a major problem." But he's like, "Come up here and play some stuff."
Oh, that's cool.
So I stepped up there, and he had just played "Run Like Hell," so I went through my "Run Like Hell" thing, and then he plays the solo from Mother, so I played that, and then my absolute all-time fave, which I could just sit and play over and over again, is the solo from Time.
Okay.
And I went through that whole thing, and the
Right.
keyboardist was like, "Damn, you played that a few times." And I was like, "Yes, I'm complete now."
Some sort of
Right?
recognition,
It's-
yeah.
right?
And your answer
Yeah.
was like, no, I've never.
Yeah.
It's my first time.
So
What
it
I've
was-
never done
it
that.
Of
was-
course, you had to play like with whatever.
yeah, it's the deal.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so I whipped out the I knew. It wasn't going to be like,
yeah,
you know.
try something new here with this huge room.
Yeah, negative. No, but it was with all the equipment that they have for that. They've got like probably 50,000 in equipment with all their
Sure.
music stuff and
Right.
lasers and everything.
Right.
So playing out there was just totally cool.
That'd be really cool.
Totally cool.
Yeah. So how are we gonna get you on a guitar here? What's the deal?
We could probably make that happen.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, we
Good.
when we walked in, you guys. It seemed like you guys were just having your own little jam session. Is that just Sunday night here? Is that
Yeah,
every night here?
yeah, it happens. I could probably, we can make it happen, depending on what your recording capabilities are,
We
which
can-
seem pretty vast.
I mean,
Yeah, it's a laptop.
yeah, this is a multi-million
man,
dollar.
That's actually
I got the-
that's
this-
actually your
this-
candle.
this-
That's yours.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
oh, you didn't bring that?
No, that's your candle.
This headset
It's
I
pretty
got on is
sweet.
pretty high tech.
Yeah, it's
though.
not too bad, right?
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So, you just start thinking about how to hook that up, because we'd love to have that kind of
Make it
as a
happen.
thing for our show. Okay, cool. So, what does a race director do from now until the 24-hour for your
Yeah.
schedule?
Assume it's just a 3-month vacation, really.
I mean, you just pretty much lay by the
You
pool
do nothing and you
until-
show up at the 24.
Yeah, as little as possible, really.
I hear you.
There's
So not much has changed,
I've got I got the cabin built over here a
Yeah,
few years ago.
which is awesome.
That's awesome.
This that we're sitting in right now is phase 2. So that was this time last year, actually. Pretty much broke ground on this a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So stuff like this happens. When you come back next year, if you do, there might be some shit built over there.
Yeah, why not?
He just declared a season 2.
Yeah,
by
he's
the
on
way.
season 2.
He's on season
Oh,
2.
yeah, I'm
because
on.
it's gonna happen.
We you got to follow up with some of this
Or I'd
stuff.
be like,
right?
dude, what
Be
were you
like,
thinking?
Remember when we said that and it happened?
Dude,
Exactly.
Sebring, what the hell? Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I'm fortunate to be able to stay home and not have to go to somebody's office every day. But I will spend a good bit of time in Daytona. I actually just got an email this morning. It was pretty much you guys' fault because I sent my boss a message to say, hey, I'm doing this thing.
I think it's funny that you actually...
I'm doing this thing, and it's going to go out to the public, so I just wanted you to be aware of it, right? So there's no surprises. And then how does he respond? Yeah, no problem, but I need you in Daytona in 2 weeks. I'm like, damn it.
No, wait.
Yeah.
No, and I say that. I'm not an office guy. I'm not an everyday guy, but Paul and I will show up in the office in Daytona probably no less than 4 or 5 times between now and Christmas for 4 or 5 days at a time, and we will get work done. It'll be mainly rulebook stuff and planning for 2016. And so I'll be there a good bit, just not every day.
And that's not smoke and mirrors. I mean, we went on the Magna side. There was it was a November test. It was a private test last November. And between getting back to the hotel, showering, and the whole thing, I don't think we sat down to eat at Carrabba's or whatever, just across the street. And it was probably like 11 at night. And as we were leaving, so it's like 40 minutes in, Paul Walter walks in, having just left the office, and he was saying, "It's been like 2 all-nighters or whatever it was," and it sounds like this is the deal when you guys show up. You're there to work.
Yeah, and for off-season stuff, it's not near as strenuous as the race events themselves. There's no harder working man in motorsports than Paul Walter. I mean, so to go back to him. So during tests and race events, he'll put in the hours. The guy he's a machine. He doesn't need sleep.
Yeah.
I try not to take advantage of that, but when I can sleep for an extra hour knowing that he's going to be at the track at 6 a.m. and I don't have to roll until 7, it's kind of nice. But
that's on record.
Well, at least there you go. He's honest.
No, but we put in hours. I mean, I'll be at the track in this role for 14 or 16 hours a day, easy, and it's no problem. It's not grueling. It's engaging and it's challenging and it's fun. So he always takes it to the next level.
With IMSA being now, a NASCAR corporation, is there any goals for you to move into that direction in stock car stuff? Is that something long term you'd want to maybe just try, or is it just like you're loving what you're at now and it's all good, or is there any sort of...
So I was a driver, and then I ended up teaching, and I kind of did that on purpose, but just because I wanted to be around racing.
Right. And
then that led to coaching. And then somehow all of that teaching, program management stuff led to officiating. I didn't mean for that to happen. Officiating led me from Formula Ford 2000 to Champ Car to ALMS to IndyCar. There were some of those things that I had in mind that I kind of wanted to do, but I didn't say, that's the job I've got my eye on. That's what I want to do. I'm totally go with the flow.
Sure.
I love doing what I'm doing right now, and I could do it for 20 years. If somebody wants me to do something different,
you'll listen to them.
Tell me what you got, right?
Yeah.
And does that mean I'm looking for deals to exit what I've got right now? No, I love doing this. I plan on doing it for a long time. If there's a different position within that organization, IMSA, NASCAR, that somebody wants me to do, then tell me what you got.
Yeah, you'll hear them out.
So it's not. I've never been a big promoter of myself in terms of that's my aspiration and that's what I'm trying to do. It just work hard and good things happen.
And you've always got hungries if it doesn't work.
I got that.
Yeah, you can go back
absolutely.
there.
Yeah, they know me. They say hi to me every time I come in there.
There you go.
So we have a couple of promotional things.
So we're going to Jeff Brown tomorrow.
Yeah, Colin's dad, guy that runs the Speed Source deal,
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Okay.
Okay.
So what do you got for him? What's a
If
question?
there's one question you could ask him.
Well, I said I've heard of him, tongue in cheek. Jeff Brown. Jeff Brown is one of the most professional guys that I've encountered in the paddock. He can.
Why did he say yes to us?
He can give feedback. He could have a lot of emotion. He's an engineer, so he doesn't. Maybe I discount that. He's a genuinely down-to-earth good guy that's there for the better cause of motor racing.
Yeah.
I have tremendous respect for the guy.
So that's not a question.
And so I copy that. And so I want to set up my question. And so for what he does and the people that he's worked with and his history and his talent, I hold in exceptionally high regard. And he started talking to me about doing motorcycle track days. And one thing I've never had interest in is taking a motorcycle on a racetrack.
And he's a big motorcycle track guy.
Until an intelligent humble guy like Jeff Brown says, come do this.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did when I got home is I started preparing my 2-stroke Yamaha for track days. All because of him. And it hasn't happened, but he and I will do a track day in the not too distant future.
Okay.
And so with what I know about Jeff on the racing side and his more private world of motorcycles, I'm genuinely curious to know from Jeff, do the guys that you ride motorcycles with during your track days know your capabilities, skill, and talent for what you do on 4 wheels?
I like that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
And that's very specific to him.
He's just going to say no.
I know, that's probably it. And that just speaks to the humility of the guy. He just quietly does his thing, and he does it very well.
Yeah.
So I think we need to get you on a guitar.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen.
But in the meantime, Continental's got the check.
I'm finished.
Barfield playing us out. Dinner with Racers on our way to see Jeff Braun.